1. I'm 27, husband is 30, daughter is 1. This story happened last night, so I'm running off like 2 hours of sleep, and my daughter wasn't into the idea of sleeping in this morning. I need ideas on what to do, can't move at the moment, or any rational explanation. Okay, let's dive into this mess. My husband, our 1-year-old, and myself live in a rental and have been here for 3 years now. When we first moved in, there was a random doorbell that would go off. There isn't a doorbell here that we can see. We thought that there was probably a battery-powered doorbell stored in the attic that is probably dying or malfunctioning. That eventually stopped, and we forgot about it for the most part. My husband also used to see what he called shadow people, hear footsteps, and have horrible sleep paralysis dreams. I always chalked it up to his mind playing tricks on him, or him trying to scare me. It's been a few years since any of that has happened, though, and for the year that our daughters lived with us, 0 spooky things happened until last night. My husband works the night shift, so it's just me and the baby most nights. Well, last night my daughter wakes up around midnight, so I get her and bring her to my bed. She is back asleep, and I'm wide awake scrolling through Hulu. As I'm searching for a show to watch, I kid you not, the foot of my bed, frame and all, lifts like half a foot off the ground and slams back down. My daughter is still asleep, but I'm frozen in fear. My first thought, there is someone under my bed. But I quickly realized that I couldn't even fit under our bed, so that is far-fetched, but not any better. I quickly scoop my daughter up football style, stand in my bed, and jump off the bed as far as possible, and run out of the room. I grab our gun, call my husband shaking and sobbing to please come home, then call my mom to come pick us up, 1-vehicle family. At that point, our kitchen lights start to dim until they were completely off, which was the last straw. I took my daughter and went to the front yard in only a t-shirt and panties, until my husband got home. Like 10 minutes. He did a sweep of the house and nothing seemed out of place, which weirdly only made me more scared. Like I would rather a stranger be under my bed than some invisible force. But I still went to my mom's. I finally fell asleep around 3:30, and my husband picked us up at 5 a.m. when he got off work. I'm afraid to sleep here, so I've been awake ever since. I don't know how I'm going to be here alone at night anymore. I'm trying to debunk what happened and find an explanation, but I can't. It may not sound scary to you, but I never felt so scared in my life, and scary stuff is 10 times worse when you have a baby to protect. What do I do? How do I bless my house correctly without making this worse? Also, I don't drink or do any drugs, so it's not like I was just tripping. My mom is a paranormal buff, and my husband and I agreed after one too many crappy spouses and scary movies to always believe each other when we say something is up. So they both believe me, but I still feel crazy. This turned into a rambling post, but it's all still fresh. 2. A little context. Until last year, I had a cat named Murray. He came to live with us in 2007 and died earlier this year. He was anywhere from 19 to 22 years old. Murray was a prolific mouse hunter, but we were not the types to own outdoor cats. For one, we lived way too close to the busy highway, and for two, it was heartbreaking if the cat never came home. So we only kept indoor cats and provided them with as much enrichment as possible. As such, because we also had a decent mouse problem, the cats were allowed to hunt in the basement if they so chose. And Murray was the best mouser I'd ever seen to this day. He was a vocal cat, and he knew how to tell us when he wanted to go downstairs in the basement. And smart enough to know that the door is opened by pushing down on the handle. When he wanted to come up, it wasn't uncommon that he would stand on his hind legs and grab the handle with his paws and attempt to pull it downward, though the handle was rather firm and it took a little oomph to open. The basement door is a small hall that also includes the door to the bathroom right next to it, and a pantry door next to that. This is where the story starts. It was probably around 2012 or 2013. I had a habit of staying up late, so it was around 3 a.m. I was sitting on the couch, which is not far from the little bathroom hall. when I started hearing the sound of the basement door shaking. I was a little agitated because clearly someone let Murray downstairs, and at the time, he and the other cat were being treated for fleas, worms, etc., which is the one time they're not supposed to go downstairs. He must have been down there for hours because I was the only one awake since around 11 p.m. I get up to open the door and let Murray upstairs with a "Murray, who let you down there?" But just before grabbing the door handle to let him up, I heard his telltale meow from just to my left. I turned around to see Murray sitting on the shelf across from the bathroom looking at the basement door rattling. This terrified me, but then it got worse. I turned back to the door because if it's not Murray, then who or what? We had another cat at the time named BB, but she had been on the couch when I got up, so it couldn't be her. Just then, the door handle starts rattling up and down as if someone is trying to open it, but just can't get it to open. And after a moment, it starts shaking more violently as if whatever it was getting frustrated at the door not opening. I put a wooden chair in front of the door, grabbed my cats, and went to bed. The rattling stopped after about a minute after I left, and I had to explain to my mom why I had put the chair there. I like to think I am a skeptical believer in the paranormal. I like to exhaust any reason it's not a haunting before defaulting to a haunting. Had the door only rattled and shook, I would have just said it was a draft, or some mice trying to wriggle under the door or something. But the sturdy handle jiggling made me nope out. I can't explain that, and I was too afraid to open the door and see what was on the other side. My dad super didn't help when I told him what happened. That door handle doesn't work that way. Pushing it down on one side doesn't push it down on the other. If you saw it was moving on your side of the door. Thanks, Dad. I hate it. So instead of a spookable in the basement with the door safely between us, it's a spookable up here with me that wants to go down there. I had hoped this story would be over, but my mom apparently experienced this too a few months later. The next time it happened, I was in a bedroom across from the little hall, and Murray changed his perch to the end table next to my bed to watch the door do its shenanigans at night. Last year, Murray got sick. He got better, but never fully recovered because of just how old he was. He lost a lot of muscle mass and was running on one kidney, and just didn't have it in him to mouse hunt anymore. Me and him got really close while he was sick. I wish we had bonded like that earlier in his life and had more time like that. He was a very independent cat, and I guess he just chose me as his companion for the end of his life. Inevitably, his other kidney gave out, and losing him was extremely hard. The vet gave him back to us in a little brown urn that we decided to put on the shelf in the hall where he used to perch before getting sick. This last year, my family was looking to buy this little farmhouse and fix it up. They didn't want to sell the old house, so my sisters moved in to watch the place. A bit before moving, I was in the kitchen when the door started rattling again. I then hear a loud bam and scoot over there to see what happened. My mom, brother, and younger sister were already there and had been watching the door jiggle. I asked what that loud noise was, and my sister says, "It just shot off the shelf and hit the pantry door." And I look in the direction to see Murray's urn on the floor in front of the pantry. Of all of the bric-a-brac on that shelf, the only thing that flew off was Murray's urn. Honestly, I saw red, and this was the only time I've ever acknowledged whatever this was. And while my mom scrambled to collect Murray, I just screamed at the door, "Leave him alone, he's already gone!" The door rattle kept going for a few more minutes before stopping. Mom put Murray's remains on the mantel by the pellet stove instead. I live up at the farm most days of the week, and to be honest, it's quiet here. There's only been one supernatural occurrence here, and it wasn't a big deal. And Murray's urn sits in the kitchen next to my mom's dog's urn. About 2 hours ago, I was helping my mom put drywall mud up in her room we gutted, when her phone started making her text notification sound, one after another. She got about 7 in 15 seconds, and the only person who does that is my younger sister when something's wrong. The phone starts ringing, and Mom answers it. My sister is scared shitless on the other end of the line. Apparently, the door at the old house started rattling in the hall. She went over and looked, and after watching it for a few moments, the door handle just falls off the door. She's packing an overnight bag and coming up to the farm for the night, or at least until my older sister gets home so she won't be home alone. I have no clue what can explain this other than ghosts or something, or what it had against my cat. Maybe it was friendly and just trying to let Murray downstairs. But then again, it threw his urn. I don't know, but I really don't miss it. 3. I'm currently 26 years old today, but when I was around 21 or so, I lived with my mother, stepdad, and 2 siblings. My mother was always a firm believer in the paranormal. This is why she wouldn't allow people to bring Ouija boards or anything occult-like into our house for fear of releasing something. Due to another incident when I was younger, I started believing myself. The house we lived in was a morgue at one point during the 1980s that, in time, got shut down due to lack of funds to continue operating. Occasionally, small things here and there would turn up missing while everyone was at work. We thought it was someone breaking in and found our doors and windows were locked as always. This is because I had a paranoid fear of break-ins because of the part of town we lived in. Eventually those things would pop up in completely different parts of the house or outside in our small yard. We had 3 cats at the time that would periodically meow at the wall in the living room. After about a month or 2 of nothing leading to clues, it got creepy because doors would begin to shut around the house, and I clearly remember hearing some sort of adult giggling when it happened. Freaking out, I called the police because Mom and I both thought someone broke in. They came in and found nothing, but would say to double-check that everything is closed and locked at all times. That same giggling went away only to resurface later and happen again about 5 days later. In response, my mother went around the house burning sage and chanting alongside my god-grandmother. God-grandmother is heavily Native American and lives on a small reservation, since she wasn't a fan of most forms of religion. After that, it went away for a while, and we thought we were free because nothing else was being misplaced or lost. The next part I'd love to hear explanations for and where the musical part comes in. One day I was sick, and couldn't go to work since I had a bad strep throat. It was just me and the 3 cats, but I was too sick to do much on my own that day. I kept coughing and was in intense pain. My stereo was by Sony, and it had a remote, but that had got broken and I had to throw it out. The only way to control it was to physically push the buttons and move it around yourself. I was watching TV in the living room because that's where the big TV was, and suddenly I heard it. My stereo turned on. My cat, Felix, started bolting around the house, getting, as I like to call, zoomies at that instant too. I managed to get up only to hear it suddenly turn off just as quickly as it came on. But the fridge door was open. I quickly shut it and assumed it was just one of our other cats that turned the stereo on while trying to climb it, and the fridge just wasn't shut all the way. But then about 20 minutes later, as I was drifting off to sleep, the stereo came on again. This time I noticed all the cats were in the living room with me. Our cat Toby loved to cuddle with me when I was sick, and the other 2 were napping. So Felix's zooming was finished at that point. I got scared, and despite being sick, I rushed out and called my mom to tell her what happened, while hiding in my car with the cats after locking the place up. Mom came rushing home after that, and our 3rd cat Yoshi wasn't letting us go inside at all. He would meow loud when we tried. So I kept the cats in my air-conditioned car while locked up to go have a look. When we went in, the stereo was still on, and Mom grabbed her metal bat from the shoe room as we went in. The closer we got to my room, the louder the volume went up, as if someone was there, turning the knob to the volume. We get to my room, and it stopped. The giggling came back. After that day, we had my god-grandmother and the village shaman come in and do a cleansing. After that, though, things calmed down for a while, but Mom took no chances, and well decided to pack up and move. After moving, I learned about this one person that was still alive when they were at the morgue, because of a mistake the doctor made while examining a patient at a nearby doctor's office, but they were only paralyzed fully. making it so they couldn't signal that they were alive at the time. So they were painfully cooked to death. To this day, I firmly believe that it was that patient who died there that did what they did to try to convey they're still there, and that they'll never find peace because they don't have a body to get closure. 4. When I was young, I had a plethora of problems at night when it came to sleeping. I'd sleepwalk, sleep talk, scream in my sleep, have full conversations I wouldn't recall with my eyes open with family members. Night terrors. I'd see figures in the dark, and frequently wake up mid-conversation in my empty bedroom, swearing that someone was beside me. Typically when this happened, it would seem like I was answering a question, and I'd be very confused when I realized nobody was with me. I also had these strange dreams where everything would be black, and it was just me and this same girl I didn't know, and it would seem like we were communicating telepathically. They had strong emotions in them, and although there were big gaps in between them, I would think about them for very long bursts. I refer to her as the Lake House Girl, as she seemed pretty sad. The dreams with her, although infrequent, have continued into adulthood. The last happened 6 years ago, with her continuously telling me to look in the basement. I turn 28 next week. These things all occurred for me from the age of 4 or 5 to the age of 12 or 13. I also wet the bed during this time, and a good majority of the time I recall being awake when it would happen, but just being too terrified to make the movement to go to the bathroom. My sister had all the same issues that I did. She's 8 years older than me, although her bedwetting lasted until she hit the age of 16. I've been told by my mom that I had some of these issues prior to my remembering them, but obviously, although I have a few memories from a very young age, I don't recall them. The main thing that always stuck with me about this time period was me seeing things in the hallway. It would happen almost nightly for a really long stretch of time, and it lasted for at least a few years, then got less frequent. At the time, I was 6, and my mom was going through chemotherapy, and my home life was fairly traumatic. My bedroom was at the end of the hall to the left, and I had a bunk bed that I slept on the top bunk of. It faced the hallway, and the first night I started seeing things, I requested a nightlight, because I'd went the whole night without falling asleep. It would always start with a sinking feeling, and my attention would go straight to my door that led out into the hallway. I'd sense something there, and then I'd begin seeing shadowy figures slowly creeping towards my doorway. Some seemed like they had hoods over their heads, and others not. I don't recall ever making out facial features. They'd get to the doorway, and then just deteriorate, but there would always be a steady line of them, and they would just keep coming. I brought it up to my parents a few times, and between that and the sleepwalking and screaming, my mom took me to the doctor, and they just told her I had night terrors and sent us on our way. When I'd bring it up more, my parents would just get angry, so I kept quiet about it, and only talked about it occasionally with my sister. One night it got particularly bad, and the figures were making it through the doorway, and I started screaming uncontrollably, and my dad got mad and came in and unplugged my nightlight and locked me inside my room. I sat there terrified for a while, and a shadow appeared on my wall but didn't move. Then I got the sinking feeling, 100 times worse than I'd ever had it before, and it felt as though my room fell away from the house altogether, along with the world as I knew it at that. I started seeing these little imp-like creatures all around my room in the darkness, along with something hanging outside of my window. I have little splotches of memories of this night that I still recall, but I've blacked out large portions of it, probably due to how bad it messed me up for a long time. I met a girl some years ago who had some similar experiences, and it re-sparked my interest in adulthood. And so far, fairy folklore, little people, little brother stories, and some cases of alien abductions and sleep paralysis have had some eerily similar details, brought back some memories. Anyone else have any experiences similar to this? I think I had sleep paralysis occasionally, also, but some of the experiences, including the really intense night, didn't seem to be that to me. But I suppose it wouldn't seem that way, although I do recall moving the night I got locked in my room. We would also go to a cabin at the lake of the Ozarks every weekend, starting when I was 6. And I'd only seen one figure there a few times on its own, but I would occasionally wake up knee-deep in the lake, just staring off into the water, or towards the end of the cove. I'd always thought it was connected to the lake for some reason, and a few years back, my family replaced the electricals there, and they found a very old German doll head in the attic with 2 candles beside it. The attic is so small that you'd pretty much have to be a child to really go up there. Before we got the cabin, my grandfather on my dad's side owned it, and he hadn't went down there in 17 years, so I'm unsure of whether it was up there for someone who'd been squatting there, or if it had been up there from the family my grandpa bought it from. They were the Willis family, and they built the cabin themselves, and their family cemetery is a few miles from the cabin. And I only got to visit when I was 6, but I plan to go back soon. I've always referred to 17 as my lucky number prior to us getting the lake house. Unsure if that is significant or not, but it feels like it might be. If any of you have any suggestions on specific people to speak with about it, it'd be appreciated. I'd be interested in hearing from as many people as I can. Cheers. 5. We had dropped my kids off to their mother's house for the weekend. My friend Ink turned to me and said, "Hey, you want to go driving around?" I love doing random things like this, so I said, "Yeah. Too bad we don't know a haunted place that we can just go to late at night." His eyes lit up. "We can go to Asylum Lake." This is a small lake in my home city where a sanitarium and asylum used to be. The short story is a lot of shady things happened there, and it was turned into a public park in the last couple of decades. Sadly, we didn't know where it was, so I suggested that we head to my grandparents' old place to see if I could sense his energy there still. Problem is, I remember only part of the way there, so I started giving directions from memory. I recall vividly this road that goes by a wooded area that turns and follows the other side of this area. I had no clue what this place was, always looked overgrown, and my parents never stopped there, so I figured it was just a woodland area. I led him through this road. Now what happens was 2 experiences at the same time, from me and Ink. I was looking out the window at the woods, and I suddenly heard a kid weakly say, "Help me." Now, I am not one to jump to paranormal, and, in fact, am a firm believer that a good chunk of paranormal activity can be explained by hallucinating, so I ignore it. To remind you, this is at night. Even so, I felt that the woods seemed like there was a blackness blanketing over the trees. As we go further down the road, the kid's voice gets louder. "Help me." We turn, and now it feels like I am the kid. I felt cold and scared. I had the urge to say out loud, "Help me." But I held in that feeling. We went past the woods and Ink pulled into a parking lot. He turned to me and said excitedly, "Did you see that?" I felt it important to explain what happened to me. What Ink experienced while he was driving, the road started to get dark. He explained that the darkness was overlapping the road, cars, and even swallowing up the lights. He said that he couldn't even see what was in his headlights. Keep in mind he is a shaman. He once summoned rain while there was no clouds in the sky for about 2 seconds by doing a ritual piercing. He burned the cloth they used to soak up blood, and it rained instantly. Anyways, he claims he saw his guardian spirit, a wolf, run in front of the car and guide him to the road where we needed to turn onto. Ink then explained that after that the light returned to normal, but he could see dark orbs bouncing around to our sides. We both decided to drive back along those roads. We both could feel something bad roaming around the woods. But nothing else happened. No voices, no orbs, and no darkness. We made it home, and we decided to do some research. I decided to turn on my camera to document our search. I was to find the area where we were and find any history of the place, and Ink was going to try and locate Asylum Lake. You can see our reaction on my video I posted on my channel years ago. You will find a link to that in the description of this video. The area we just passed, the woods that I always vividly remembered as a kid, and little else of the area, was the very lake we were searching for. I swear this, at least my account, and the honest truth. I cannot speak for Ink, however, since I didn't tell him what happened to me until he told me what he saw, and our accounts were similar with the darkness. I believe him. All of this is happening around Asylum Lake, which I learned that other shamans and people with strong spiritual energies have their own experiences with the area. Most of them didn't know the history of the place. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 244. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Right, now before we go on, I have a special shout out to give to Railuge, who wrote story number 5. I'm getting closer to pronouncing that correctly every time I say it. I don't think I'm still quite there yet, but I'm trying. If you click on the link, that'll take you through their channel where there's other spooky stories and other things for you to have a look at. And if you enjoy what you see, maybe give them a subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you're also allowed to do that if you want. I'm just saying if you wanted to, I wouldn't stop you. Okay, now, we also have a little birthday shout out to do. Where did I put the birthday shout out? Ah, there we are. Right, this shout out goes to Tony, who is 39 today. A very happy birthday to you, Tony. May it be filled with all the wonderful things you enjoy, be that cake and kittens and alcohol and soda and marshmallows. Well, maybe not marshmallows. Marshmallows are evil, of course. I think we all know that. But anyway, I'd now like to sing happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tony. Happy birthday to you. Alrighty, and I think on that note, we'll wrap things up there for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.